I will protect our fundamental freedom to make our own reproductive health care decisions. I will fight for access to abortion. The 2024 election is critical. Reproductive freedom is absolutely on the ballot. Here in Congressional District 6, the contrast between myself and my opponent could not be more stark. In Congress, I will protect our freedom to make our own reproductive health care decisions. My opponent will not. He will give it away to politicians to make these decisions for us. It's that simple. It's a choice. And I think most Arizonans know where they stand on this issue. So with that, I want to open this up and thank the members of this roundtable for coming. And maybe we can start by just going around and just introducing yourselves. And Mayor, would you start us off?
I'm Mayor Regina Romero, first elected in November of 2019, and my pronouns are she, her, and ella. And I'm happy to be here, happy to talk about this really important issue, something that I have been working on, advocating for, even way before I got elected to the Tucson City Council. Years before, I remember marching and rallying with Planned Parenthood and others, even at this table, for sexual assault and reproductive freedom and domestic violence issues throughout the city of Tucson, and really believe in being able to have bodily autonomy, and that is definitely on the line. And so would love to hear from the experts at the table, because I know that you're all experts in this conversation. So thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes.
My name is Amalia Luxajo. I'm the CEO for the Women's Foundation of the state of Arizona. I'm incredibly grateful to be here. Part of our work is to ensure that women and girls of all identities across Arizona thrive, and part of that is to work in partnership with our leaders, with organizations like Planned Parenthood, to make sure that Arizonans have access to abortion. And like Ms. Engel said, I was also horrified when the Supreme Court decision came down. That actually came down while I was in the middle of my maternity leave. And to have come back with less rights than what I had when I first left was incredibly disheartening. So I'm thrilled at the opportunity to have this conversation here today.
I'm Nancy Gutierrez. I serve in the Arizona State House representing LD 18. And I'm also a teacher here at Tucson High. And I'm honored to be here with you all. And it's important to me when you were speaking and saying what the one Siscomani cheered at the Hobbs decision, and made me think back to that day. And I marched, when we met downtown, and with my daughters who are young adults and my students, and we marched because we were angry and scared. And that's why this is important to me, because I'm angry and I'm afraid that my young adult daughters don't have the rights that I have. And this has been important to me my whole life. And it's one of the reasons that I ran for office last year, and will continue to learn from the experts and the folks at Planned Parenthood. And we have so many experts, we're lucky in that way, but I will continue to march and fight for our right.
My name is Adelita Grijalva. I'm chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. Prior to this position, I served on the Tucson Unified School District for 20 years. This issue is very important to our entire community. There are non-negotiables, and the right of a pregnant person to make a decision about their own body is theirs, and theirs alone, and should be. I am the mom of my daughter Adelina, and it scares me to think that she has less rights than my mom did. That is such a fundamental right that she no longer has, and is something that we absolutely have to fight for. We have an opportunity to talk to a lot of young people, and this is an issue that is really important to them, because not only is access to reproductive health decisions, but you have to get parent permission for any inquiry about your health when you're a minor. And that is so scary, because some of us don't have parents that are easy to talk to. And I think that it's important because we have to break the cycle of poverty. We have to break the cycle of young people having babies. And there are ways to do that. Accessibility is key to it. So when you don't have access to birth control, what do we think is going to occur? We have to make sure that accessibility is open for all issues, and this is critical. We have 9 out of 10 people say that if the health of a person who is pregnant is at risk, then an abortion is appropriate. If 86% say if a person is pregnant because of rape or incest, that is something that should be considered. That's across the political spectrum, but we're not talking about any of those issues because it's not going to happen at all kind of conversation. And so for us to be able to push back on that and continue to march and fight and be vocal is really critical. And so I'm glad to be here to lend my voice of support.
Thank you so much. I can't think of a better group to be sitting here and discussing these issues. So each of you have touched upon it already, but I do want to talk just in a little bit more depth of really why it's so important to you. Choking up just thinking about it, going into my daughter's room and talking to her the day that the Dobbs decision came down, and just sitting on the bed and talking to her. And what we talked about is how it felt like just this huge slap across the face. Like, you're not in charge. And it just felt very disrespectful, dismissive, and there's really no other healthcare decision that we regulate and we give to other people, politicians, to make these kinds of decisions. And here, as a result of taking away Dobbs, taking away that privacy right, where within that realm of privacy, we can talk to our doctors, we can talk to our minister, our rabbi, we can talk at these issues through with our family members. And now it's like door's been open, and it's like all these people out there grandstanding and making the decision on that. And in addition to all the things I think about and I hear from my constituents and I know about the statistics and what a difference this will make on an economic level in terms of taking this right away, how women will be more likely to fall into poverty, the issues in terms of the rights of doctors, that they may be subject to criminal sanctions. That might happen here in Arizona as a result of potentially bringing back the 1864 law. All of those issues are why they're important to me. But I'd love to give you all a little bit more of an opportunity to probe your own reasons.
Without the right to bodily autonomy, what do we have? And this only happened to certain types of people that it affects. Our body should be no one's issue but our own. And so it's about control. It's about controlling our bodies. And so without bodily autonomy to whatever services we need, should be our own decision. It's like, for me, when I heard, actually it was the leak, right? When we heard about the leak, the Dobbs decision, my first reaction was lots of anger. And we've been having this conversation for over a century in this country. But Roe v. Wade really gave the right to privacy, a constitutional right to people that can get pregnant, the capacity to make the decision on our own. And it felt for me, I felt a lot of anger, and it felt as though we had gone back 100 years in terms of our rights. And for me, it's about that particular very basic right for a person to make their own decisions. And I do have a daughter, but I also have a son. And this issue is not just about my daughter, it's about our society, about how we move forward with their rights, our rights, and to be able to do something about it. So my first reaction to the leak in terms of Dobbs was lots of anger. And I did what I can as a mayor of Tucson, which was to bring in our city manager, our city attorney, our chief of police, because remember that 1864 law basically says, here in Arizona, basically says that people can be arrested for performing a medical procedure. And so what we did was put together an ordinance telling and support, because the chief of police is supportive of prioritizing his work, and in support of the chief's prioritizing his work, we basically put together an ordinance that passed unanimously even before Dobbs was handed down by the Supreme Court. It was the league that made us act, and we passed an ordinance unanimously, basically supporting the chief in prioritizing his work and not arresting medical care providers that provide abortion services in Tucson. So we acted. I usually like to, if I'm pissed off about something or extremely happy about something or know that something needs to happen, it's marching, rallying, speaking up, but also doing something about it, a tangible action. And that's how we reacted here in Tucson. It was approved unanimously by mayor and council. But really, let's really center these concerns on freedom and the freedoms that we have and the control that no other person that does not have the ability to procreate has. It's just those of us that can procreate. Those of us are controlled now.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off that my child or my children, because it is a decision that maybe my son will one day have to make as well with whatever partner, it affects all of us. The most affected, the front line, are women of color and low-income women.
Yep.
And so it really affects our lives. And so it's just very upsetting, but I think that since the decision has been made and is being pushed by politicians, then we need to elect politicians.
Absolutely.
We need to elect politicians that make policy and laws
Absolutely.
that believe in the right to freedom in terms of abortion that is part of our healthcare.
Don't you find it fascinating, though, that who it is that is talking about this issue? Specifically, a party that wants government to stay out of their business. Unless you're a person who's pregnant, then all of a sudden we need all of your input to decide what we're going to do with our own bodies. To me, that is the most frustrating piece, because it's you're part of a party that says government needs to stay out of our business.
Don't tell me to wear a mask.
Don't tell me to have a vaccine. Don't tell me to do any of these things. But let me tell you what you're going to do with your body.
Yes.
And that's not okay.
Absolutely. And I just think all of our society, you go to the hospital, nobody can do anything to your body without you filing a consent. That is the way we are built on that issue of you have the control. And now look what we've done. We've taken away. Look who's pushing this.
And I just want to piggyback off of what the mayor said on how this disproportionately impacts women and people of color. We all know systemically that's how things have been set up, so that women and people of color don't succeed. And I'm just not talking about Arizona, I'm talking about across the board, which is why it's so important to talk about that, because as we all know, we've studied all the things, we know the statistics, it's largely people of color that are living in the margins, that are low income. And so what are we doing to consider that? We're also forgetting that apart from the child that comes into this world, there's birthing parents that we need to take care of too. I literally got into a very passionate discussion with my mother on the way over here, and we were talking about that. And one of the things that we did as a foundation was pass legislation around extending access for birthing folks once they gave birth to the baby. Because in its previous iteration, it was like, you gave birth, thank you so much, have a nice life and good luck to you. When we know in the first 12 months, that's when we really have to take care of that parent. There's a higher likelihood for maternal death, there's the postpartum depression, there's lots of hormonal changes that happen in our bodies, lots of physical changes that happen in our bodies, and it's just so important not to forget the other people, right? Certain parties think about the children all the time, but then there's this other parent, right? Then there's this other person, the parent, that's all of a sudden left in the shadows. And it's all this vicious cycle, and we have to really talk about things holistically when we're talking about bodily autonomy and access to abortion, and thinking about, again, how this disproportionately impacts particular populations, and how are we figuring out how to make legislation once we have our elected officials so that everyone is seen.
You're making some wonderful connections, not only between this reproductive health care decision, access to abortion, but how it is connected to maternal health, support for families, support for prenatal health. All of these issues are related in terms of we're not allowing women to make those decisions, and we're not necessarily supporting them in this whole reproductive health care area. And how will yanking away this decision, how will that impact their ability to navigate being potentially a parent?
First of all, I was very proud that when the mayor and council did that, yes, this is where I want to live and represent. But it is about control, because it's not about the babies, or else we would have access, every child would have
Universal,
access
preschool.
to universal preschool. We would have child care at school. We would feed all of our students. That is not happening. So it is about control. And I am concerned that it's not just about abortion. Once abortion is banned, then it will be birth control. They're already coming for our sex education. And so it's not just abortion. That is the tipping point. It's huge, but it goes so far beyond that. It goes to gender affirming care. It will hurt all of this. And this is when we need to stand up and speak out and protect our right to abortion, because it is our right. It's no one else's right to tell me what to do with my body. And when I was pregnant a long time ago, in the early 2000s, I didn't have to tell anyone or ask anyone. I did talk to my husband about it, but I didn't have to. And if there were issues, I could have gone to my doctor and made decisions for myself. And now we can still do that in Arizona. We do have a 15-week abortion ban, so up to 15 weeks we can still have that right, but it's under attack and it's not okay. And I will not let us let go of that control, because it affects the rest of our lives and our poverty level and getting out of poverty and our education. I've had students who have had to leave school because they felt like that was their only option when they got pregnant, and it's not their only option.
Do you know, a colleague of mine said to me when the Supreme Court decision came down, she said, "Why are you so upset? The systems are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, because it's about control." And she said, "This abortion thing, just a distraction. Just a distraction, because what's about to happen next, you wait." Yeah.
Let's talk about what has been happening next, because I think we've all been seeing it. By taking away the privacy right, we have been seeing, I feel, Republican extremists have been emboldened by this. And they've made it their mission to go as far as they can, right up to the edge. Really, the next step, if they had the political power, would be a national abortion ban. They haven't gone quite that far yet, but they've gone, we've seen it with my opponent. There are proposals to do it, it's out there, and they've been passing bills to restrict abortion medication, to take every single little hook that they can get to take away these rights. And it's incredible to me that they are focusing on our service members and our veterans, because they're so dependent on the federal government that gives them the federal hook. So seeing my opponent, Juan Ciscomani, vote to take away these rights from veterans and from those who are using federal benefits to access health care, I feel is particularly, it's underhanded and will really hurt the people that we have asked to stand up for us, like our veterans. And yet, those are the people whose rights we're taking away. And in the state level, in the state legislature,
Oh, it's been a while.
it's been quite interesting. So I'm just trying to see, is this what you all are seeing?
We have legislation limiting access to information. We used to be able to poll students, and it was great for funding for Arizona because we could highlight, hey, these are the programs, these are the gaps. We can't even assess, we can't even ask our students anything anymore at all. And so Pima County Health Department used to work with our school districts to just get information, basic information. This is not identifiable. It's talking about your access to drugs and alcohol, access to firearms. They don't want us to have that information so they can then spin the narrative. And I think that's a lot of what's happening. And if you look at the cuts that have really been proposed, and thank heavens in Arizona that we have a new governor and a new attorney general. Because if we didn't, then we would really be at a horrible disadvantage at this point. But if you look at the kinds of programs that historically have been cut, it's all about our vulnerable communities. And then where does the responsibility to help support those people come? It comes to the cities and the counties and our school districts. And the problem there is that we don't have an unlimited supply of funding. Everything is a short term, there's a deadline, there's an expiration date to that funding. And so when we were looking, the mayor and I were just at a conversation with our governor about housing. And if you look at those that are directly impacted, it's our most vulnerable, usually single moms, single parents with young children. And this is where, and those are the people that are utilizing our services more and are dependent now because we've cut off their access to education. We've made it very difficult for you to go back into, finish your education, get into the workforce, get additional education that you wanted to. Because I think you have the more and the less than. And that's what we're doing every day if we continue to allow this kind of rhetoric.
I agree completely, and I see it from the school district side and then the state house side. And I reiterate that without Governor Hobbs and Attorney General Mays, we would have fetal personhood laws, which are basically abortion bans. That's what we were seeing in the House this session, several of them, and they're really disguised well. We care if you're a pregnant person, they say woman, but pregnant person, when you get in a car accident, then shouldn't the person that caused that be more at fault? That's a sneaky way to say that a fetus has more rights than the person carrying it. So we saw lots of those, and they were vetoed, thank goodness. And then with Governor Hobbs's executive order giving Attorney General Mays the right over the county attorneys to deal with abortion, people providing abortion care and not prosecuting them, that is huge. That is fundamental. And so if we did not elect those pro-choice, pro-abortion women, it would be a totally different state of Arizona right now, today. So if we can't keep them and hopefully flip our House and Senate, these are going to continue to come up and we are going to lose more. Because if it was about the kids, yet again, if it was about families, then kids would come to school and we would just feed them like we did during the pandemic. That would boost every single household that we have. And that wasn't even heard. I couldn't even get that considered because I brought the bill and it was laughed at.
Saying what's next, right? There's been abortion bans in other states.
Yes.
And it's not a coincidence that now that there's a coalition in Arizona that is launching an effort to get abortion rights on the state constitution,
Yes.
that the 1864 law is now being considered by the very conservative Arizona Supreme Court. And so it's not a coincidence that is happening, and every state, whether it's a red state or a blue state that has had it on the ballot has been able to pass it. And like you said, Supervisor, people here in Arizona support the right to bodily autonomy. 90%, 9 out of 10 people support the right to an abortion by an individual. And we're going to continue seeing the fight here in the state and the fight in the federal government. It's all about state rights until it has to do with bodily autonomy. Until it's not. Right? That's like the national abortion ban. But it's infuriating for me. It is infuriating for me because it's an economic issue. It is a personal issue.
It's a justice issue.
Right. Which is why it's so important to elect officials that are pro-abortion. Dare I say, that are brave enough to say the words abortion, because otherwise we get folks that say that they're pro-choice and maybe not so much, we find out later on. And those are the folks, we want to make sure we have those folks as our representatives and in leadership in our state so that we're all on the right side of history with this.
Absolutely.
And that's a key thing, is really the connection between these issues and democracy. How strengthening democracy, voting for our own interests, we can address this issue. And voting up and down the ballot for pro-abortion access Democrats who are going to protect these rights and protect our families and our communities is just so important. And making sure that those people are in office and that we're not spending all of our time. I'm so happy to see that there is the initiative will go on the ballot. We need that.
Yes.
Because of what is going on. But if we had the people in office that were truly reflecting what we know people want in this area, that wouldn't even be necessary. We need to defeat the anti-abortion extremists. That's why I'm running for Congress here in CD6, because we have an anti-abortion extremist in office right now. And we've already seen what a sea change it has made to have Governor Hobbs and Attorney General Mays on the state level being able to defend these freedoms against this wave of extremism that we've been seeing.
And we also have to be really cognizant of the attacks on access to voting. So when we have these initiatives there, the goal isn't to eliminate a lot of people from the voting rolls in order to give us like an accurate and reflective vote of what our community wants.
Those are Ohio voters.
And also the initiatives that are being put on the ballot by the Republicans in the state ledge to limit the ability for people to put initiatives on the ballot.
Absolutely.
That's coming
Yes.
up. So
Right.
this year in November, next year in November, Arizona's gonna be hot because of the presidential, because of the Senate race, because of several congressional districts in Arizona that are at play. But also there's going to be initiatives that could prevent people-led, resident-led initiatives to be able to put items on the ballot. This 10% from every precinct, I think it is, to put anything on the ballot. Any individual or groups or coalitions will need 10% of every precinct in Arizona in terms of signatures to put something on the ballot. The Republicans in the state legislature are making it harder and harder for people to vote, making it harder and harder for people to put initiatives on the ballot that gives us more right, or that gives us the ability to push for what we want. The dark money initiative is still in the courts, passed by voters in Arizona in the courts. And
But we did
it is
see-
about democracy.
yes,
it is about
it is.
democracy.
And it's a balance of the powers, and I
Yeah.
think that's the concern also, is that we work really hard to put these initiatives on the ballot, the voters speak, and then it goes to the courts, and then it's thrown out. How many times do we have to vote to increase money to public education? And voters are very clear, and so I think it's important that we do everything we can, not only to make sure that access is important, but if this initiative gets on the ballot, that it's reflected and we can actually institute it. That's gonna be, it's a fight all around and it's designed to be difficult.
Yep.
I agree with you. It's
That's
totally
exactly
designed.
correct.
It's going to take us really educating voters as well, because this is going to be an extremely long ballot with initiatives, with some other items, with presidential race, with all of our House races. So that's why this is inherently linked, because we know that voters support abortion. We know that. It's not close. It's a landslide. But by taking away our votes, by kicking us off of the early voting list, by not having an early voting list, by not wanting people to vote by mail, by taking away voting centers, that is an effort to quiet our votes. And that is unacceptable.
And we've
so-
seen in other states, it's explicitly to quiet our votes on abortion
Yes.
access.
Yep.
And that was very clear in Ohio. That was the whole reason they were trying to change the percentage that you needed in order to get an initiative, in order to silence that vote. And yet, they defeated it. So I think we can take heart in that.
Right, that's where democracy does come in,
Yes.
because this is really emboldened voters to say, you're not going to take my right away, and this is why. And this is where we need young voters, 18 to
Absolutely.
25-year-olds, feel that power of their vote, and to teach them that vote does matter.
Absolutely.
Ask Attorney General Chris Mays if every vote matters. She says it every time she goes to a hearing. Every single vote matters, and yeah, I'm just so grateful for everyone who voted for her.
And I know personally young women, actually young men too, who have said, I need to get active.
Yes.
I need to figure out what's going on. It is really woken them up, what's been going on with abortion in terms of their need to get engaged, their need to register to vote, find out who the candidates are, find out what their positions are on issues of reproductive rights. And from that, they're becoming more engaged citizens generally, which is also what we need. But it's amazing how much they care about this issue, and it's been a wake-up call to them. So I think we're going to see that. I think this has been a really good conversation. I've learned a lot in terms of how issues of our ability to make these decisions for ourselves over something like bodily autonomy, or healthcare decisions over something like abortion, is so connected to so many other things. To the family, to justice issues, to programs that we have in our community, how we're helping people to be self-sufficient and lead independent lives, healthy lives, have access to healthcare, and how it is also connected to our democracy. This is all incredibly important. I see you as really my sisters in this fight, and I know that you've been out there for years, and you're going to continue to fight on this. So I feel very supported in my fight, and especially in this very important congressional race, in which this issue, I'm going to say it again, it could not be a starker contrast between myself and my opponent, and will be very much, I think, an issue that the people of this district will have to think about in terms of casting their vote. Do they want to cast their vote for somebody like me, who is going to defend their freedom to make these kinds of decisions for themselves, with their family, and their medical provider? Or are they going to cast it for somebody who's demonstrated himself to be an extremist on this issue, willing to give it away to politicians? So we have to defeat them at the ballot box, and we're going to have to keep our democracy strong so we can do that. So thank you again for being here, for being strong on this issue.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.